Hi everyone and welcome back. So behind me here is one of hundreds of abandoned factories that you'll find all across Australia, particularly in Melbourne, if there's any still standing. But places like this used to actually employ hundreds of thousands of people building the country brick by brick. And in this case, with this particular building here, that was quite literal. This is the old Box Hill Brickworks. It was opened in the late 1800s and it kept pumping out bricks and building materials for almost 100 years. And then in 1988, it shut its doors and it's just been sitting quite sadly over there behind me ever since. So what is it that actually happened? Why is this the case? Why did a nation that used to build just about anything and everything suddenly stop building altogether? We were once a thriving hub of manufacturing and production, but today there's just about nothing that's really left. And you might be shocked when you hear what the real answer is as to why this actually all happened. Because I can assure you, it wasn't an accident. This wasn't something that just happened. Australia didn't just lose its factories for no particular reason. They were signed away. They were literally signed away. Now, before we actually dig into what exactly happened and what was signed, let's get a few of the common misconceptions out of the way first. You might hear people say, look, Australia's just got too expensive to do any manufacturing. And I'd just ask then, how can we still mine all the resources and ship them overseas, and then products are made, we buy them back as finished products for even more money? If cost was the problem, selling raw materials would probably be the last thing that you'd think would be the logical thing to do, right? Others say, well, we couldn't compete with cheaper countries. So why is it that countries then like Germany and Japan have kept their manufacturing? Both of those countries have very high wages, they've got strong unions, strict safety rules, and they still make the cars, they still make the machinery, still make the electronics and the tools. And they didn't stop building, they didn't stop producing. Instead, they invested. Now, here's another one. Technology replaced jobs. People will say, well, it's technology. Well, if that's true, then why are we importing more than we ever have? Technology is actually supposed to make local production more efficient. It's not supposed to shut it down. The only time technology itself replaces jobs is when a government has or does allow companies to move their entire operations offshore. Another one you might hear is Australia's just moved into a service economy. Yeah, well, we did. We went from building things that benefit people and that last a lifetime and provide jobs to having a workforce that instead spends half of its time or half of its day selling coffee to each other. See, these excuses, they sound logical and reasonable until you realise that something's missing here. We didn't lose our manufacturing because of any of these reasons. It wasn't because of competition or technology or wages. Australia lost its manufacturing because somebody, somewhere, and I'm about to show you who and why, told this country to stop building. We didn't all just wake up one morning 50 years ago and say, you know what, manufacturing, it's overrated. Let's just outsource all of our entire future. It's not what we did. It's not how it works. See, instead somebody decided it for us. Back in the wonderful 1970s, our government signed an agreement, a declaration, a polite little document with maybe a boring name, the Lima Declaration. It sounds quite harmless, doesn't it? Doesn't sound like anything unusual, like something that maybe your aunt might fill out, the Lima Declaration, before she goes on a cruise. It's kind of something it sounds like. But this agreement, this declaration basically said developed countries like Australia should move their industry to developing countries and then buy back the stuff, which is just a fancy and diplomatic way of saying, look, stop making things, stop producing things and start shopping, start consuming. We literally agreed to shut down our own factories so other countries could build theirs. Like, imagine going and telling your boss, look, here's my job, take it, give it to someone else, I'll pay them to do it, they can have my wage, and you can still charge me the tax, you can still take the tax bill. That's basically what Australia did. And the government's the one that actually signed it. Not in crayon, not as a joke, they actually put their name on it. And the best part, nobody asked you, once again. No referendum, no vote, no say, just, oh, you know what? G'day guys, enjoy your service-based country, your service-based economy. We're going to take your factories off you now, and ever since then, we've been shipping out our resources and importing products like a nation that's sleeping or that has amnesia. So the Lima Agreement, it's called the Lima Declaration and Plan of Action on Industrial Development and Cooperation. I'll just firstly take you through to paragraph 5, recognising the urgent need to bring about the establishment of a new international economic order based on equity, sovereign equality, interdependence and cooperation, as has been expressed in the Declaration, and Programme of Action on the establishment of a new international economic order in order to transform the present structure of economic relations. Okay, so this agreement was part of what they call the new international economic order. Turning the world upside down is how I see it. All in the name of equity, sovereign equality and cooperation. Let's have a look at paragraph 27. That countries, particularly developed countries like Australia, should undertake an objective and critical examination of their present policies and make appropriate changes so as to facilitate the expansion and diversification of imports from developing countries. So in other words, right, in plain English, stop building locally and start buying from overseas. Start being a consumer. Paragraph 28, that the share of the developing countries in total world industrial production should be increased to the maximum possible extent, while making every endeavour to ensure that the industrial growth so achieved is distributed among the developing countries as evenly as possible. So again, a translation. Your factories go overseas, your job goes overseas, and you pay for it as well. Look, this entire document needs a good read. I will link it into the description below. You'll find it in the description if you wanted to have a read. But it explicitly required developed countries to change their policies so that they import more from developing countries. They portray a goal of shifting industrial production away from developed countries. Look, this wasn't accidental. This was a documented objective. So we didn't lose manufacturing. Our leaders, they actually signed it away. They signed it away quietly like they always do, without a vote. Not because we couldn't build, not because we forgot, but because someone decided that we shouldn't. And here's the funniest part. Today, this is called progress here in Australia. We're supposed to be considered to be doing quite well. So who was actually behind this Lima Declaration or this Lima Agreement? Well, the meeting was held by the United Nations Industrial Development Organisation, UNIDO or UNIDO. But we weren't forced, and this is the most important thing. The country wasn't forced. The UN didn't force us. Australia itself, our leaders chose to sign it. Our politicians looked at a plan that clearly shifted our industry overseas. And they said, yeah, this sounds fair, this sounds good, let's do it, why not? And it wasn't just one party either. It wasn't the Liberals, it wasn't the Labor Party in particular. Over the decades, over the last 50 years, both sides have kept going. Labor governments, liberal governments as well. We've had different faces, but all moving in the same direction. You know how they argue like enemies at election time? They'll look like or appear like they're fighting or arguing with each other. Then suddenly they manage to agree on things that make no sense for Australians whatsoever. Well, yeah, this was one of them. They didn't ask us. They didn't explain it. They just changed the policy quietly behind the scenes. And obviously, the factories followed, just like the one behind me. Now, here's the big question. Can we change it? Well, yes, I believe we can, but not by waiting around for politicians to fix it or do something about it, because I think we all know by now that they won't. They've had 50 years and they've done nothing. The only way that this kind of thing actually does change for the better is, firstly, for Australians to actually know about what happened, to talk about what happened, to demand answers, and to refuse this idea or to refuse to accept this idea that we're too small or that we're too expensive to build things again. We're not too small. We're not too expensive, not in comparison to other countries. We were told not to build, and that lie is still running our economy today. Australia can manufacture. Australia can innovate. We can build. We're not dumb. We can be a country that actually produces something rather than just consuming everything, being consumers mindlessly. But it starts with people simply knowing first, knowing the truth. So look, if this video has made you think, if it opened up your eyes, if you learnt something from it, even if it was just a little bit, make sure that you share it with a friend. Make sure you talk about it at the dinner table. If you're going out for dinner tonight, have a chat about it. Don't let this stuff just stay buried in an old United Nations PDF. Of course, if you want more videos like this, if you enjoy the content, breaking down what's been happening in this world, well, make sure that you hit the like, the subscribe button, throw a comment in the box below, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.